What's up, everybody? I'm Nathan Graham Davis, and I'm going to re-break in as a Hollywood screenwriter. Hey, before we get started, don't forget to subscribe. I know that I am learning a ton from this whole process. I hope that you are too. There's a lot coming up, so make sure to subscribe so that you don't miss it. This is week 18, and I am well into the second draft of my script, Ether. I will admit I'm like 5 to 10 pages behind on that right now. To be perfectly honest, my mental game is completely fucking thrown off by this whole insane insurrection thing that just happened. A lot of COVID related stuff going on too. And, things happen sometimes. Hopefully not normally like that, but they do happen and they throw you off. And the best that you can do is just regroup and move on. So that's what I'm doing. This week, I am pumped to be speaking with Jay and Chris Thornton, who are longtime friends of mine. They are WGA screenwriters. They are the authors of Reapers, and their directorial debut, Cactus Jack, is dropping next week, which is super exciting. If you've been following this, you know that I'm a producer on Cactus Jack. I am so glad and honored and excited to be involved on this project. I hope that everybody watching this gets a chance to check it out if you can stomach it. But fair warning, I do want to let you know it is about a vile, hateful white supremacist. And 4 years ago when we started making this movie, we had no idea how much that type of shit was going to blow up. We had actually set the release date on purpose for around this inauguration, but had no idea that it would be following a insurrection. So it feels pretty insane to be releasing it right now. We definitely put a lot of thought into whether we wanted to do that or push it back. But ultimately, we decided that this is, these current events, they underscore the need for art like this. And so we are putting it out there. So I hope that you'll check it out. It is definitely stomach churning. It will leave an impression. If you do check it out, let us know what you think. Anyway, we had a great conversation. My goal was to just kind of talk about rewriting with them, since that's what I'm doing. And we did talk about that, but we definitely talked about just the business of screenwriting in Hollywood and the things that led them to make Cactus Jack, and just kind of their whole ethos on guerrilla filmmaking. And it was super cool. So check it out. What's up, Jay?
What up? Let me get my video up.
Yo.
What it be?
How's it going, dude?
Just trying to open this booze. I'm failing.
My wife got me a heated, electric heated tea kettle for Christmas so that I could keep on pouring myself tea during these up in the attic.
Nice.
So
Nice.
It's actually really perfect.
Yeah, tea's great, man. I alternate lately. My thing has been coffee, tea, black coffee, green tea usually.
Yeah, I'm black coffee as well. But yeah, I really quit drinking like back in June completely because I was drinking so much with COVID and everything. And the stress was just getting to me, especially with the day job and whatnot. And I finally was like, this is absolutely stupid for my body. I just need a good break. And so I didn't drink again at all until mid-December. And then after I finished that first draft, I kind of allowed myself just to chill for a couple weeks. But now I'm basically back off of it. But since I've never had a drink with you guys before, I'll join you for Hard Out.
Do you have any of that mistletoe shit left?
Yeah, I do. I forgot about that, actually. I got some of that downstairs. So, yeah, I've got a couple bottles of it.
Nice.
Is this related
Chris,
to
I don't
the
know if you
comic
know
book?
about this. Do you know about that? Or?
I know about the comic, but not how it relates to booze.
So the comic, there's the mistletoe whiskey is something that exists in the comic, and it's whiskey made with elf blood. And so it kind of slows down time for humans who drink it just enough to make it really trippy. And so it's super expensive and sought after. And so we were able to partner with a distillery to release a mistletoe whiskey for 3 Christmases in a row, which was super cool. So I think that is my absolute favorite claim to fame as a writer. No question.
Yeah.
I always wanted to get my hands on one of those, but never got around to it.
Yeah, there's really nothing left. If you ever make your way out to Massachusetts and I've got some, I'll certainly pour you a shot of it. But So
that is an
but yeah, I mean, it's
interesting
just
sign
fun.
of modern success with a project or something like, Game of Thrones has its alcohols and,
Right.
Metallica, etc. It's like, that's the
We
thing
were
to do
before
now.
Game of
Harry
Thrones.
Potter's butterbeer or whatever.
That's
I
right.
need a Cactus Jack. What would be this? Would it be
Liquid wrench.
Yeah, there you go. It's just 100 proof, just straight up alcohol.
Everclear.
Yeah, right.
So I wanted to bring you on since I'm in the middle of my second draft now and talk rewriting a bit, if we could. I think it's actually really interesting to talk to you about it because in my mind, and maybe this is completely not true at all, you guys don't do nearly as much rewriting as a lot of other screenwriters do.
Yeah, I think maybe behind closed doors, people aren't as aware of it, but there have been spec scripts that we've totally overhauled and rewritten, and we'll continually, over time, just chisel at them.
Yeah, it's like years later sometimes, though. We won't just stick with a draft and keep trying to get it right and everything and power through it, but we'll stick some shit in a drawer like Mechanicsville, which you read ages ago, was our calling card script that got us first signed at WME and all this shit. For like 8 years, it was a great calling card script, got us work, etc. Probably 4 years ago, I think it was during chemo, when I was in chemo, I was just like, we had this epiphany about it and ended up cutting 30 pages from it, rewriting the end. I mean, that's pretty drastic, completely made it more of a neo-noir. So, but again, it's not like,
wow, that's way different than what I remember then. So it's like it's a neo-noir now.
I mean, it was always a bank robbery with a love triangle and shit. So it had some of those elements. It had even, I mean, one of the staples of noir
kind of like a
is
farce.
The veteran, the post-war veteran coming back into society. It had some of that with the AWOL character. But yeah, it's just more of it was a Kentucky Fried Heist film, I would say. But we just played more into the love triangle elements, cut down a lot of the action. So the action is more just gritty, realistic, punctuated violence instead of this long drawn out bank heist caper shit,
So what inspired you to do that?
I don't know. I think I was just reading through some of our old shit. That's what we like to do too, is just not look at it for ages, and
put it in the drawer for a while
and then look at it again ages later and hate it.
Right.
Just like, this is not good. Like, we missed so many opportunities. You got to have those fresh eyes to me. Like, what you're doing to me sounds almost impossible because you don't really get that distance. You're relying on notes from other people and you're kind of throwing all those in the hopper and figuring out which ones resonate with you and shit. But to us, the best critic is yourself after time, when you come back to it with fresh eyes, you see your own
maybe
flaws.
That's why, right? Like, because I don't, in all like the conversations that we've had, because I mean, Jay, you and I have probably talked at least like every week or whatever for the last who knows how many years.
Yeah.
And like, I don't remember hearing you talk about like exchanging notes a lot. Right. And so, but then again, you guys have each other to bounce off of too. Which is
it was daily. We pretty much daily had conversations, and it would be about all kinds of things, the project at hand, as well as all other kinds of shit that just like pops in our heads. So it really is. Not so much that we had these, this one project that we would just focus on entirely. It's like every time we talk, we just for this what about if we did this with this story?
It's a shitstorm of ideas.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's just a whirlwind of
it's hard to stay on task, to be honest, to see one script through. I mean, we've abandoned scripts. Like, we got this script, Kill Switch, that I've been meaning to do a big rewrite on to switch the POV, but this is like a massive page one undertaking, which maybe I'll do once Jack is done and shit and out next week or whatever, or in a week or so. And, but I don't know. Sometimes I just feel like moving on. It's like trying to mend a broken relationship, or should you just go find someone new?
Yeah. I mean, I've abandoned so many scripts at this point, but there's one that I definitely am going to come back to, and I'm going to try and do that kind of in between rewrites here, because there's always that 3-week period or whatever that I'm waiting to get notes back from people. Did you ever read that script Lucid that I wrote? It was like this.
I think I only read like the first few pages or some shit.
Okay. Yeah. So it's like this kind of like
succubus,
fantastic,
like a lawyer succubus.
Yeah. Like kind of like a trippy fatal attraction. So it's I felt like I got it pretty good, and I was trying to put it out there several years ago. I mean, this is actually like 2013, 2014. But rereading it, I'm not a fan at all of a lot of the things that I did.
I mean,
we've been there plenty.
It's like that script Hubris of ours that a lot of people love.
Dude,
some people told us that's their favorite script ever.
That's one of my favorite scripts of yours.
There's stuff in it we definitely want to change, but we just never got around to it because it feels like a lost cause too. Like,
for anybody watching this, you should go read Hubris and don't listen to them, because that's one of my favorite scripts out there. So.
Yeah, but we wrote that. All right, we were with Mike Asola at WME. He was on that wave of just crushing spec sales. So we wrote that thinking what the market might want, made it kind of more of a big budget action thing through Hades or whatever. The premise being that this dude, his daughter, this guy in ancient Greece, this winemaker, one-armed ex-soldier winemaker, his daughter is murdered and raped by these hoplite soldiers passing through. So before he can get his revenge on this soldier who did this shit, that soldier dies in battle. So he kills himself so that he can go to Hades and find the motherfucker in the afterlife and get his revenge in the afterlife, which is sick to us. I still love that. Doesn't he get
his arm back too?
Like when he goes down, when he's down in Hades, he's made whole and shit.
I forgot about that. That was a cool moment too. Like,
that's a cool moment.
I loved that one. That was before I knew you. I think I read it because I saw it on the he was on the blacklist, right?
No, dude, that script went out to like 7 people.
Wasn't that on some list?
Might have been.
I don't think so. I think it was just.
Oh, that was Kill Switch.
Mechanicsville,
maybe a contest.
Somehow I found that script before I knew.
I think it was just that big writers group. It was buzzing. A lot of people read it and said it was awesome and shit in that writers group. And it was around the same time Immortals came out that we were trying to sell it. I know you had Charlie and Floss on here.
Yeah.
And those guys were rep by our agent as well, I think, right?
Yeah, they were with the Soul at the same time.
So it was kind of surreal going to watch that.
So our script didn't really, and that movie actually made money, but it was still considered underperformed. The first opening box office, which was insane, because it made like $35 million fucking dollars. Like, how well does it have to do? It was a movie from Relativity, you know. Henry Cavill wasn't a huge star at the time and shit, so I thought it did pretty fucking well, and we were like, sweet. And then they were lukewarm on sending out Our Sword and Sandals Greek fucking epic, you know. That's the problem with the business, you know. We joke about going back and rewriting it as like a epic poem in the style of Homer,
and also just the tone being more like, you know, the revenge aspect, like making it more of a Western almost vibe, like Unforgiven or something.
Unforgiven.
This big, like, you know, big budget Clash of the Titans sort of thing, you know.
There was we always talk shit about the running and jumping in Hollywood studio movies. Like, you can't make a Star Trek movie now without them running and jumping and shit. Like, Star Trek was the standing, sitting man's sci-fi, the thinking man's sci-fi, but now it's all running and jumping. And we kind of made that a running and jumping adventure through Hades, the 3 levels of Hades and shit. But in retrospect, we would go back and make it more, like Chris said, like Unforgiven meets Passion of the Christ or some shit, you know? Just more.
I would be super interested to see what you did with that. But that's hilarious to me, because that script in my mind is awesome. So, I mean, and I guess that just shows kind of like...
Well, for a big budget running and jumping movie, I think it would be the sickest one ever.
Oh, yeah.
But that's just not our sensibilities and shit, you know? So when we read it, we're like,
I just write a new script at that point.
Exactly.
Well, and you know, we write prose as well, so we could live in that form in the future.
Not that anybody reads.
Did you do much like rewriting on Reapers or anything like that? Or... that was another one where I felt like you kind of put a draft out there and, you know, noodled with a little bit, but not much more than that.
I think maybe your perspective is based on the fact that we've already done a lot of rewriting before we share it.
A lot of people are like, I just finished the first draft of this new script and shit. We keep our shit in the lab until we feel it's pretty good. And I will say our first drafts are pretty fucking high level, I think.
That's true. Well, I was going to say with Reapers, a lot of it was like going through in waves as it's being written. So like revisiting the same paragraph over and over and over until it feels really good, and still going back and rewriting again one or two more passes after. But during the time of writing, there's a lot of rewriting happening in the moment, you know, or just after.
Not huge plot shifts in that one though, right?
No, it would be more just changing sometimes the way into a scene, or I mean, it can be pretty hefty, you know, sometimes the changes, but it wouldn't be like the overall like But much of it was written somewhat open-ended too, in terms of letting the story tell itself and guide itself, with some things like conceptually in the future that could happen, but not too rigidly outlined or anything. Yeah,
exactly.
And then, Jay and I would read each other's work and give a few notes, but usually they'd be pretty small, just to like, hey, what if we do it this way, or maybe a word choice change here or there, but it's usually not too drastic at that point.
We've come a long way on that front, dude. We used to fucking have like 20-minute discussions over a fucking word choice.
Well, we used to write. Like there was a period where we were both sharing an apartment and would put the script up on the wall on a projector and word by word, like debate each, like the phrasing of every sentence and every punctuation down to fucking everything. But now we tend to write independently more of each other. We'll brainstorm together, which is a lot of fun. That's probably the most fun part. It's just like cracking the ideas and just hammering out the basic thrust of it and everything. And then we'll go our separate ways. Usually each of us will have a different thing that we're working on, separate projects, and then trade out back and forth.
Yeah, like Chris is really the genius behind Reapers. That's his shit. He was always the dungeon master growing up. He's and when I was on chemo, we had gotten that Zac Efron deal, put us in the WGA, gave us some money. He quit his day job. He moved out here. But then shit was development hell with that. And then I went into chemo. So we kind of stalled for a bit. And he was down in the basement, just, I don't know, pride or whatever, or just our kitchen's gross or something. He wouldn't come up and eat hardly. He got scrawny as fuck. And he was just down there. He'd wake and bake every morning and just start writing Reapers.
Like monk-like life, yeah.
It was amazing. So that was a lot of that output. The day job shit has been a struggle for us, and I know you struggle with it too.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard, man.
Energy and time
drain. About that a little bit before you came on, and just
the best work we've ever done was when we were in that apartment in Rhode Island where he was on unemployment and I was on disability because I fucking wrecked my knee. So we each had like a few grand coming in per month with no jobs. So we just crushed. That's when we wrote Heart, rewrote it, wrote Mechanicsville, broke in. And then after the Zac Efron thing, even when it stalled, he was still here,
so there is something to writing without a day job to get.
Oh yeah,
absolutely. Well, Kafka, was saying for him to be able to write, it had to be complete stillness. He would write in the middle of the night when everyone's asleep and stuff, which is what I was doing too when I was at Jay's.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard.
But then he said, no, that's not even really it. He said, it has to be as if you're dead. Kafka said, as if you're like actually not only complete stillness, but it's as if you're just completely dead to the world.
Like no life intruding on you. No, that's why I always work at night too.
As an analogy.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Then you end up becoming sleep deprived and shit sometimes.
I can't even imagine it. Like, I can't imagine that. My writing gets done in the middle of chaos, basically, Like
you're a fucking disciplined dude, though. I imagine you're not a snoozer, are you? I thought about that today as I was snoozing.
Not anymore.
I was like, I bet Nate doesn't even snooze once.
No.
Well, actually, I just listened to him and Clint's show, and they were talking about getting up like at 5 a.m. or whatever it was, and running and
4:30.
And Jay and I genetically, we've done the 23andMe thing, and it says we're nocturnal. We have the nocturnal gene. Which
I think
makes
I do
sense.
too. Like, I don't like getting up at 4:30. I have to do it though, because there's no way by the end of the day, like after the day job, which is, it can be really intense.
Right.
There's a ton of responsibility after that. And then I get home, I've got my kids and like trying to be a good dad, hang with them, dinner, all that stuff, put them to bed. By the time, then it's 8:30 and I've had a really intense long day. Like I'm drained and my writing is just not as good as it is early in the morning. So the only way I can do it productively is to get up early.
I'll go so far as to say, since I quit smoking, I feel like my writing's not as good. Since I don't drink like I used to, I feel like my writing's not as good. Like I feel like when I was under the influence, I did, if not better work, the process was so much more fun and seamless and had less resistance, because that's what those things do. They alleviate stress,
So I've tried both. And like, I feel like, when I'm high, like I just am not productive. And
I'm at cigarettes.
When I drink, I fall asleep. So it's I don't know. It doesn't work for me for some
Actually,
reason.
I'm with you though, because like for me, I'm at my best as soon as I get up. Really, like for me, like when I was at Jay's and working on Reapers and stuff, almost literally just roll out the bed, make some coffee, and start writing.
Mm-hmm.
And that
well,
really
weed was in there too.
time.
You would wake and bake.
Oh, definitely. Well, weed and coffee are a great counterbalancing combination. You know,
and there's different kinds of weed, sativa versus indica, all that kind of shit. But for me, I've always had anxiety issues and shit too, and I will go through this crucible with weed often, where I'll smoke it and like, oh my god, and I go into like a panic state. But once I get through that, it's almost as if you took on like Atlas, all the burdens of the world, and have this panic state, but then you shrug off the entire fucking world and you feel more creatively free and, you know, unburdened.
Sounds awesome.
But how compatible is that with being a dad and blah, blah, blah. You know,
I don't smoke.
That's where I have the advantage on you guys not having kids, you know.
Right.
For me, I don't have to, like when I get home from work, I can't work on creative things. I'm just not nearly as functional because my job's very stressful and it just takes a lot out of me by the end of the day too.
It's all a trade-off.
It'd be easy to complain about stuff like that, but I think, you know, I mean, obviously, first of all, like I love being a dad. That is actually my favorite thing about life, and you know, and I love writing. But being a dad is as good as it gets, and also I think the life experience that I gain from that certainly contributes something to the writing that I do. But yeah, does it take away from the time and mental energy I have? 100%. So
I just mean with respect to you having to get up early so you can have the time to write, you know, it's just literally just logistically a factor, you know.
If I didn't have kids, I think I wouldn't get up early. I really,
that's what I'm getting at. That's why I'm the way I am, that rather than getting up early, you know, and just, man, Jay and I both, again, we have that gene, just the alarm clock. I hit snooze constantly. I'm not a morning person. I love mornings, but I just have a trouble getting up. I have this.
I'm not a wake up and have to be somewhere shit. That's what
I mean, I get up to go to a job every day, but because I have to, and I just force it, you know. But like when I fell into my natural rhythm at Jay's, I would be up all night and just like go to sleep after the sun came up, like 8 a.m. or something. Go to sleep, wake up at 2 p.m.
I still have not adhered to a normal schedule. Like
Jay's really all over the place.
Shit, I'm a mess, dude. It's so bad.
Your sleep schedule is insane. Like, or not, the schedule isn't the right word for it, but
it's unhealthy. I'm an unhealthy ass person. I just started talking to a therapist again like a week ago for the first time in years, but just trying to get that mindfulness, because of course I know all the healthy self-care things I should do throughout the day.
Everybody does, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So.
Well, I was telling the therapist, I saw this Bill Burr quote probably a year or two ago that really resonated with me. Not that it resonated enough for me to make any drastic changes in my lifestyle the last 2 years. But he said, it's funny when you're a kid, you're like, and this applies actually to writing and the rigors of writing and shit too, and being disciplined in general. When you're a kid, you think, I can't wait to get out of here and be my own boss, and no one's going to tell me when to go to bed, what to eat, etc. Then you grow up and it dawns on you that you still need a parent. You just have to be your own parent.
Be your own, right.
You have to tell yourself to do the things that you know you should do, because you don't have some overlord or guardian, depending on, you know, their disposition, guiding you.
Self-loathing.
Good point.
I've never parented myself well. And
the tool I use for that a lot is self-loathing. Like, I'll be like, fuck you can't have that, you piece of shit. You know what I mean?
Right. That's more like the Joe Rogan thing. He bullies himself into doing shit, you know, shames himself. But I guess I'm shameless, just
He's
a fucking slob.
I'm usually alternating between self-loathing and self-doubt somewhere, you know.
Right.
So,
I do know that about you.
I don't know. Like, I think I probably come across as more disciplined than I actually am. I mean, I am relatively disciplined most of the time, but then, you know, I go through bouts where it's just, I completely let things go. And like right now, like my fitness has taken a serious dive since I've been doing all this stuff, because I just don't have the time. Like, there's no time for all the.
I don't even have that excuse necessarily of time. Like, I don't have the day job that you have. So I don't even have that excuse.
You have a lot going on, though, dude. You're finishing a movie.
Lot going on, for sure.
So
essentially,
I sleep like 2 to 3 hours a night in spurts here and there. Like sometimes when my wife will get home from work and I'll crash until they're going to bed and shit, and then it's a mess, dude. Like,
but I
humans
think
are
your
not meant
point,
to do
Jay,
that.
is even if you didn't have all those things, if you were back saying when had no job, no
I still used to be like
responsibilities,
that.
you still wouldn't exercise, right? Is the point.
No.
And I struggle with that too.
Well, that's that mindfulness thing, you know.
I
What's
sort of
funny is
look
you
at
used to be an athlete, right?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, martial artist and played sports and shit. And I was definitely naturally an athlete, but I wasn't a very disciplined one either. That was always my problem, you know.
I usually find I have to sort of hack myself. Like I'm the same way. I actually am pretty lazy. I don't really I hate going to the gym and like just taking this chunk of time and just doing nothing but working out during it and shit. So my approach to that has been to just throw a couple dumbbells around the apartment, and just when I walk by it, I just grab it and throw it around a little bit and stuff to at least be doing something. So you're kind of incorporating it into your, like, almost making it not too much thought involved. You just, you grab it and you go, and then you get your heart rate up a little bit and everything. But I also walk to
Those
work
things make
a lot,
a difference.
which is a couple, like 2.5
That's a good hack. Yeah, that's really good. Yeah. But so how do you stay on top of your writing though, Chris? Like, how do you make sure that you're constantly working at that?
Lately it's been more, it's not so much sitting down writing. It's more like working on Jack and just various, like, just random things we have to do on that front. But it depends on when we're talking. Again, when I wasn't working a day job, it was, it would just came so naturally. Just sit down and you would achieve flow state and you just go. Achieving flow state is the challenge now.
Exactly.
Like now it's all logistical sort of things, and like, just
that's what I meant with the weed going through the crucible. It's like I would come out in a flow state after going through this.
I could see how that could help you get there faster too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to me, all of this is in service of achieving that flow state. So the less I'm doing that, the more I feel like I'm not doing what I want to be doing. So that's the thing with filmmaking. It involves all these other things that are like, herding cats and juggling, spinning plates and all these things. And that's not flow state.
You can hit flow state just playing your guitar. So then it's like, why bother doing any of this shit?
Right. Well, part of it is I want to be able to support myself by achieving flow state is basically the equation. I want to find a career that allows me to achieve flow state as much as possible is really the...
Yeah. And like, as far as writing goes, I mean, there's not a whole lot outside of screenwriting that can really pay well.
Exactly.
Exactly.
But I mean, all that stuff that you're just saying is kind of brings me to like my point as far as like discipline for anything is like you do all those things in order to do something that you love doing, right? Yes. Like, so with working out, I hate going, like, I haven't been into a gym and I can't tell you how many years. I hate that. Like that's the worst thing I could possibly do with my time as far as I'm concerned. Mm-hmm. But I love trail running because I hit flow state pretty quickly, and I can just go for a couple hours in flow state, and it's amazing,
Are you doing that through nature? Are you going to a park?
So he lives in what, Northampton, Mass. It's a nice Western Massachusetts. It's beautiful.
I'm in Orange County. I don't have a car too. That's part of my whole setup right now.
But you got some mountains out there. So
that's the thing, though. I don't have a car, like I said. So I getting somewhere like that's a little more, but it's still not the same, man. Like when you're up somewhere where it's like wet earth, the smell of wet earth and shit, and like up here, it's just all scrubby amazing. And shit, or down here.
We're East Coasters originally.
Not hard for me.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. So I mean, it's not hard for me to keep up with that because I love doing it, and that I guess that's kind of like the point I was saying is like but I didn't find that until I was 25 or 26. So before that, I mean, I was in horrible shape, but I kind of discovered that and it just became a thing. And now I do all sorts of stuff to supplement it too, because it just makes it better, And
let me ask you that office space question. If you had $1 million or 10 million or whatever, and never had to work again, would you write?
Yeah, man, absolutely. And I would make movies, so. And
some days I wonder, man, I feel like maybe it's because I've just haven't slept for years properly and shit. I feel like I could just veg out and eat fucking pizzas and play video games till I die if I was rich.
Well, remember how a couple of years ago I was trying to actually start a business and stuff like that? And the whole reason why was because I thought it was something I might be able to sell and then turn that into enough money to write full time without having a day job. I mean, it's always been about being able to write and make movies, so. And I don't know, it would surprise me if you didn't stick with it, if you were, if you were in a place where you didn't need to,
I think, I think Chris and I would podcast still. For us, half of the juice was always the bullshitting about it.
Right.
And that's really where you write. It's the writing versus the typing, just coming up with the stories together. That's the fun part to us. The sitting down and transcribing our thoughts, essentially, the writing. Mm-hmm. Not the most fun to me.
Well, when I was at Jay's, I would go for walks a lot with his dog or without, around the neighborhood and everything. And that for me, like you with the running, and Stephen King is this way too with his walks. Like a lot of the writing is done when you're out just in, doing something like that. And the actual process of doing the writing isn't as satisfying or thrilling as it is at just conceiving of the ideas and how things might fit together and all that. Mm-hmm. But I will say again, with prose, it is more fun to me because it is about the language more, I mean, with scripts it is too, but there's just something about the way it's straight up like telepathy that, mm-hmm. you're just crafting the best way to get the message across and describe it and everything. Whereas, with the script, it's a bit more of a craft type thing.
The script is about economy of language. You know what I mean?
Construction almost or something.
Yes. Yeah, it's different.
Which is a fun game too. Mm-hmm. Like how much can I distill this and still be evocative and shit? But in prose, and I find myself writing kind of too purple prose that I don't want to go back and rewrite because that's the fun to me. It's like fun to see how lyrical I could be with prose. But then
if it works, it works.
Yeah, but
Yeah, I think that criticism is a little unjust as far as the purple prose thing that people mm-hmm. just come down on it so much. I think that is part of the greatness of language, that you can kind of have fun with it and get a little more.
Yeah. Well, it's like when done well, it's like anything like voiceover in movies.
Nobody cares. Nobody that matters cares, right?
Right.
I mean, if the story is working and it's flowing on the page, nobody.
Absolutely. And newsflash, nobody matters.
You know Adam Barker, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So he
writes very much like a stylistic Southern fried shit,
Well,
He's
dude,
a good writer.
He wrote this zombie script that I read an early draft of not too long ago, and I mean, it was like poetic prose the whole way through, and it was fucking awesome. Mm-hmm. Like it was so
and when
great.
I think about it, we go for that too.
You know that Brad Inglesby dude? He was with Asola. That's the reason we signed with Asola out of other agents. He's the guy who wrote that script, The Low Dweller.
And it became, what was the name in the movie? Actually, they
Out of the
changed
Furnace.
its name. Out of the Furnace.
Became Scott Cooper came in and took it over and completely rewrote it. It wasn't even the same shit. But at one point, The Low Dweller was like a little Southern fried character drama thriller kind of that sold for like $1 million though, because DiCaprio had attached to it.
Mm-hmm. That's right. I remember it was
that was all the rage, and we signed with Asola right after that shit. Like boom, and he's on this crazy streak of selling these $1 million specs, and that was a huge influence on us to show us how poetic a script could be. That Brad Inglesby dude is the truth. He can write his ass off, and I guarantee you he was probably influenced by Adam as well. Because you think, and you read a lot of scripts, like, if you would, I mean, I've honestly, literally not read that many scripts, but you would read, say, a Die Hard or some hit script, and, it's solidly written and economical and a page turner, but it's not art. That dude's script was art. And we're like, oh, you can be an artist and work in Hollywood. Little did we know that was like one of the last of those kind of scripts probably to sell. Now you can make the blacklist and then go up for OWAs for whatever fucking IP there is, but I mean,
that does seem like the way some of the more artistic stuff happens now. At least it's not necessarily selling, but it hits the blacklist and then it maybe puts you in the running for something.
Yeah, but we've been down that road and it sucks, and I don't think we ever want any part of it again. The bake-offs, the OWAs, all that shit.
Dude, well, I mean, so I was just thinking, so you're talking about how you signed with Asola right after Immortals or whatever, or Immortals came out while you were trying to get Hubris out, and then he had just had that success with Low Dweller. So I mean, that was a while ago, right?
It's 10, 11
so,
years ago.
You guys must have signed with him. Was there a feeling of fuck yeah, we are?
Yeah. At the moment, we were like, damn. I mean, it's exactly lining right up, right, with the Inglesby thing, $1 million for this literary written script, and then Immortals with, and we're writing Hubris. It just was like,
and honestly, we scored an assignment out of the very first meeting we ever took. It took a little while, but we had a meeting with Paradox Entertainment, which is this fucking dude, Fred Malmberg. He's like this what is he? He's some kind of Scandinavian, Swedish or Norwegian or some shit. So he kind of had all Robert E. Howard shit, and we're like, Robert E. Howard's the fucking man. Conan the movie, you know, Oliver Stone and Michael Cimino version of it or whatever when we were kids is fucking massive to us.
Fuck yeah.
And we went into this meeting, just a general off of Mechanicsville, the first meeting Sola sent us on, and we told it, we did our research though, and we said, hey, we see that you guys got this Vultures of Wapeton. It's a short story Western of Robert E. Howard's in the works. We would love to take a crack at that. Yeah, dude, we crushed that. It's still one of my favorites.
That was great.
I know, and the exec too still loves it. It's just all of the sort of
they had the shitty director attached and all that. It's just notes and
saga.
Cooks in the kitchen, but we started to dawn on us then that this whole assignment thing sucked. And we sold the pitch to Zac Efron. That went through development hell, all this, and it brings us to why we made Cactus Jack, honestly. Eventually.
Yeah, so talk about that.
I mean, we got tired of people saying, do you have anything that I can see or have seen? And we're like, no, we've made a lot of money. We've been flown to Rome to write for people. We've written for movie stars. We've done all this. We're in the WGA, but nothing's produced and nothing's even close to produced. We've optioned TV shows and just, there would always be fucked up weird timing. Like we had a thing with Harvey, with the Weinstein Company. You know what happened there?
Just before all that shit blew up, like
right.
That's right.
And we just went and pitched a TV show, The Revenger, yeah, which is still the dankest shit ever. But Escape Artists actually wanted to take it back to market, and we started working with them, but they just kept noting it to the point where like this isn't even the fucking story we're telling, and we just walked away. Which I don't know how our reps feel about that kind of shit. Where we're like, you have companies with track records who want to take this shit to market, and you're like, fuck them. But it's really like Chris said, how you want to live your life.
You're going to spend your time, man. Yeah.
You know, and so making this movie, again, part of it was a whole fuck you rejection of Hollywood in general. Let's make a movie they would never make. Let's do that Robert Rodriguez shit where we look around at the assets around us. What can we make that's tiny but feels big? It's provocative. It's interesting. A movie you're not going to get out of the Hollywood system. We might find our own audience. We could use that to springboard podcasting and all this other shit we're interested in, sell some Reapers novels, whatever. And so that's what we set out to do. But along the way, we scored another TV development deal on this idea of the Incorruptibles we had, which was actually a season 2 through line for Revenger. That
was it really? I didn't know that.
Well, we ended up leaving WME because the Sola never did dick for us, to be honest. So we ended up leaving William Morris. We went agentless for a bit, and then we wrote Revenger, and UTA signed us. And when we went in there, and we first met our agents at UTA, we're pitching them Revenger, essentially, which they had already read the pilot and loved it and signed us, but they wanted to hear the rest. And I said, we've got this through line in season 2 of these bad guys, but we kind of feel like that could be its own thing. And we told them what it was. They're like, that's your next fucking show. Pull that shit out of Revenger. That's your next show. So we did. We pulled it out. We actually had a meeting with Davis, right? Entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
And we told them that. We pitched that to them kind of just on the sly anyway, just to feel it out in the real world. And they were like, we want that show. Went back to our agents. Agents did nothing. We're still at UTA. No offense, no harm, no foul. We're just telling shit like it is. If any of you fucking listen to this at some point. Didn't do shit with this show. Just sat on it forever.
Look, I love that you're willing to be that honest about it.
Dude, I don't give a fuck.
People don't talk about this, and so nobody hears about it, right? And so, like, you know, you guys probably had no idea how crazy shit would be once you got to the other side of it, right? Because nobody preps you for it, you know?
I mean, you see those movies growing up, like The Big Picture and those Hollywood satires that show how stupid it is. Like, did you ever see that show Action? Fucking great show. Jay Moore is like an executive.
With that. Oh, sorry. That's
go ahead.
Jay Moore, yeah. But yeah, we saw it as satire. We didn't realize it was reality.
Right?
Yeah,
it's like the reality is more hyperbolic than the fucking satire of it.
It's maddening, you know? Like, I mean, once I got repped, I thought for sure, like I was a year out from quitting my day job. You know, I was 100% confident of that. Like that was the way it was going to go.
I never heard the word development hell before we got into the business.
Right.
You know, before we first started out at the very beginning, I mean, shit, you know, in high school, you know, we were like making our own comic books and things. And it went into, you know, us writing a couple of screenplays thinking, the way it worked would be they'd
so
buy it, they
naive.
go make the movie. Maybe there'd be a rewrite or something of some kind that would be, you know, whatever. But then you'd hear these stories about, I forget the name of the script, but it was an early one, something about a guy, a nuclear. He just, well, the whole story was whoever it was that got hired to go rewrite it for $1 million, and we were like, if that's a writer's career in Hollywood, you just get paid, you know, $1 million, get flown to Europe to go rewrite this movie or whatever. You know, we were like, it was total fantasy, and then you start to realize, you know, the development hell side, and you know, I didn't even getting in. I was so naive.
I mean, literally, if you take an Uber,
the way it worked at all,
or order Instacart or some shit in LA, it very well is probably a fucking screenwriter.
Yeah,
who's picking you up and shit.
It's
And I'm talking WGA screenwriter. I'm talking legit screenwriter. Like, it is a feast or famine business. Almost always fucking famine. Hyper competitive. That's why we've always had, like, we're both super pro union labor guys, but it's a weird union because it's not like the Teamsters. It's a bunch of independent freelancers who are actually competing for these scant jobs, but they're in a union together. It's a fucking weird thing to me. You know what I mean? Now I love the union.
You put it like that.
I love what they do, and they helped us out. Actually, to go back to that Vultures thing, that fucking guy owed us like 20 grand for like a year, and we weren't even in the guild yet because we took some deal with the devil where we took polish money to do a complete page one rewrite where we didn't even look at the previous drafts they had or anything. We wrote this shit from scratch, our own ideas in it and everything. Paid like polish money, like literally 10 grand to write a whole feature. That's the deal with the devil a lot of writers take to break in or whatever, you know, and just because we love the material. And then eventually he didn't pay us like the last 5 grand he owed us or something. So we went to the guild and we were like, hey, psst, first off, this motherfucker's over here making people do page one rewrites for 10 grand. We totally ratted him out. The guild went to him. We're like, we're going to blacklist you from writing with WJ writers. We weren't even in the guild yet, and they had our back like that. So it is fucking awesome. But it's just a weird dichotomy as far as unions go and shit. I don't even know what got me onto this, but the whole business is fucking weird and crazy.
I wish people would talk more about that publicly, because I think, you know, it's good to know what you're getting into if you're pursuing shit. It's
like a shit show. I mean, I honestly advise you to fucking take your phone and make a movie like we did with Cactus Jack. Now, I can't tell you
today
it's going to be a success story or anything. It might very well much blow up in our faces. The whole thing canceled. I'm not worried about. I'm not worried about that. I'm just saying it might. I could see it whimpering and dying or whatever. I could see it not taking off or being seen that much. You know what I mean? Like, how do you market this? How do you get it out there? How do you get people to, even if somebody loves it, this is a hard movie to get someone to suggest to someone else. That's the problem. Word of mouth's even tough for something that gnarly.
But now it exists, you know? And if somebody asks, you know, what they can see of yours,
exactly.
There's something that exists.
And they'll know what they're getting into with us.
Right.
And when you make a film like this, the goalpost isn't as high as far as what it takes to consider it successful. You know, like it could be like, say 100,000 people around the world watch it. That's amazing, you know?
Oh yeah.
Whereas with a Hollywood movie, you know, as we were just discussing, you know, you have to, with Immortals, you know, you have to like make, you know, tens of millions of dollars to even be considered and be this far above your budget. I mean, shit, break even beyond that's successful really. And as far as at least not being a failure, right, financially. But with this, I mean, what was the total budget in the end? I don't know, like
25 grand-ish,
something like that. Yeah. So
not high.
No.
Yeah, that's a pretty low bar. And then there might be enough. My point is there might be enough of a niche for anything really out there in the entire world of 7 billion people that, you know, more and more increasingly you're having access to the internet, and COVID changed the scene as well too, with, you know, the whole paradigm shifting.
The dearth of Hollywood production,
streaming, and
it's like these are the kind of movies people should be making during COVID. Contained, a small skeletal crew, very few actors. You know,
plus the democratization of all the tools. You know, now you can do, like Jay said, you can film it on your cell phone. You can edit it all on your own computer with relatively accessible software. You know.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much that you can do now that just didn't exist 10 years ago, and it's absolutely amazing.
It's just changing before our eyes. Yeah. So might as well think forward and do what you can with that, like, again, how do you want to spend your time? Do you want to be making a movie? Do you want to be dealing with just all of these maneuvering your way through this labyrinth of,
it's honestly more fun to me, because the fun part of filmmaking is the problem solving on the fly. You can turn it into kind of a game, as frustrating and shit as it is and stressful, but when you boil it down to the way we did it with the skeletal crew and everything, it becomes almost like your kids again, playing make-em-ups in the backyard, make-believe and shit, you know what I mean? But as soon as you start adding unions and craft services and it becomes about that. It becomes this logistical military operation.
And I think some people seek that out. So that's what some people want out of it, I think. Some people are into that. They like all of that whole scene. It's a scene essentially, but not us so much. I mean,
I do actually find, the business and collaborative side of filmmaking to be really interesting. And that's part of why I wanted to, start at least kind of dipping my toe into producing, because I think I would enjoy that. And I want to continue to do more of it. But also a big part of me is just chasing the idea of being able to devote my life to creating, like you guys were talking about. You had that period of time where you just got to focus on writing. And that to me sounds amazing. And
that's the dream to me too.
That is the dream, right? It's the dream. And
honestly, the best we ever had it was in Rhode Island, where my knee was torn up and he was on unemployment. That was the best we ever had, because there was no kids, no jobs, none of that shit. We're probably
static at all.
Still I was in my late 20s, I think. You were probably 30 or something.
Yeah, thereabouts.
31, 32.
Early 30s,
still young-ish. And naive enough to just power through that shit. And again, we thought, oh man, we wrote this Western. We're going to send this shit to Robert Duvall. He's going to think it's the shit. He's going to make it. Like, we literally were that clueless. And it's like Robert Duvall. These are the guys we're targeting. And then you go to your agents and they're all like, he's not a meaningful attachment. There's like 6 dudes who are meaningful attachments and all that bullshit of Hollywood, where you end up just running into these bottlenecks, and it's like being in the labyrinth in fucking Tartarus. And
series of gates.
It's always shifting, and there's always, and I get it, because there's millions and millions of dollars that are going to be raised and put up and gambled. So I get all this risk aversion and shit, but it's just not the way we want to operate. I'd rather make artistic, tiny shit as small as we can and see. There's part of me that still wants to sell Cactus Jack for $1 and say, can we sell 1 million at $1? Versus the $5 to $8 that our team is,
maybe in time.
I mean, the way that we're rolling it out, we can
change it eventually, because we own it.
Exactly. That typically happens anyway. Yeah.
So in a year, we drop it to $1 or whatever. Maybe then it catches on. Who knows? But the point is, you own it. You control it.
Yeah. And
that's the other thing.
Creatively, that's true too, when it comes to the kinds of stories you can tell and stuff. Like, I just watched another podcast that I often watch. They reviewed, they just were listing their favorite horror movies, and one of them was Creepshow. And one of the things when they were commenting on it that caught my ear was, and I've always felt this way, that what's great about that is it's a series of short stories. So the endings can be anything. It's not, the hero doesn't have to win, can just take whatever weird turn it wants to. And as independent filmmakers, you have that freedom more than, people who just, you can't have it end this way. It's not going to play with people, or they like focus groups and all that kind of shit. Like, to me, I'd rather watch something that the auteur had this vision and just put that vision down.
Warts and all.
Way more compelling.
Lo-fi, warty.
That's what's really cool about doing something like Cactus Jack for $25,000 is, like, you guys just went for it, right? I mean, all out, for better or for worse. And we have no idea how people are going to respond. I'm kind of terrified by it, but
it's art, man. That's the point of art, dude, is to,
I think out of the guests you've had on, the one I resonated the most with, just philosophically, was our boy Ryan Jackson, friend of our show as well. He talks about art, and he leans into art versus the commerce of it all. And we've known writers, and we've been in little secret writers groups with these writers who are fucking commerce all day, and they crush, and they get assignments, and they fucking write Atari 2600 video game adaptations and shit. And they have a great fucking career and live in fucking the hills or whatever. But man, you talk about like that whole Office Space question. I couldn't do it. I don't think I could live my life that way. The money.
Here's what I was going to say about that, by the way. What I could see, so you mentioned like taking hubris and like making it into some like epic, like, poem or whatever. I feel like that's the type of shit that you would do if you didn't have to worry about money.
Yes,
like,
absolutely.
I think you would just do stuff like that, and you might do that. And then once you got that out of your system, you might be doing something entirely different, but you'd continue creating, and part of that would be writing.
We definitely would.
You do write a lot, right? Like, I mean, you've always been pretty prolific. You've put a bunch of shit out there.
I think with Jack, it's, once that took over, it changed the,
Yeah, here's the thing about making a movie like a Jack. It is conceivably more difficult than making a 10, 20, $30 million movie, because you have to literally wear every hat. There's so much administrative bullshit I have to do, chasing down release forms and shit that I shouldn't have to do. I should just be focused on the creative, writing, directing. That's it. The point being, though, that you have to wear all these hats. And like when we shot this movie, for the most part, after the first day, that cost $800, and I had a full crew and camera rentals and all this shit. And I'm like, this is fucking never going to work this way. We scaled it all back. We turned it to a found footage movie. I said, I'm going to shoot it myself on fucking phones. I'm going to give myself essentially 10 minutes to light a shot, because that's a lot of it. I'm a conscientious person. It's killing me inside that my actor's sitting there for 45 minutes with a thumb in his ass, losing any mojo he had from the last scene, while this guy takes 45 minutes to light. I'll take shittier lighting.
Remember you talking about that? Yeah,
I'll take shittier lo-fi lighting to keep the fucking mojo going. You know what I mean?
When we first conceived of doing Jack, it was right after shooting a short film, Knock Knock, by ourselves. It's sort of this Edgar Allan Poe sort of meets The Shining thing, where it's this guy in his house and he just hears these knocks at his doors, and when he checks, there's no one there, and it's like, is he going crazy or some kid fucking with him or whatever, and off of that, we were like, what can we do that's similar to that? The approach of what do you have around you that you can work with? So that's why we decided to shoot it in his basement and just with one actor, et cetera. And we were like, what can you do with that? And we thought, well, what if it's just this hate-filled podcaster guy? I mean, we were always captivated by films like American History X and Apt Pupil and Higher Learning, where like people are radicalized and become hateful and stuff, and what makes people like that and stuff. So we were like, what if it's just this guy in his mom's basement doing a podcast? And at the time, I think we were leaning towards just trying to do it just like we did with Knock Knock, minimal crew, etc. But then it just kind of took on a life of where we did start to expand on that and make it more like a normal sort of set with a person doing the lighting and and then it was like, wait, no, what are we doing? We hit the brakes and realized we should go back to what we had done with Knock Knock. And when we were first thinking of this, that again, especially with the technology today, the fact that you can just take a cell phone that's basically just the screen itself, that you're going to see in the final product, and not have to complicate it much further beyond that. I mean,
and it is amazing what you can do in post as far as color correction and sound, and
you just have more power now, right?
I'm not going to lie. A lot of our sound, there was a stage we're making this by myself. It got so arduous. I was like, fuck it. I'm just doing in-camera, in-phone sound. I'm not even using a Zoom recorder and boom mics and shit, because
holy shit,
holding all that.
I didn't realize that.
Dude, you can clean that shit up so well in post.
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling you, people have so many excuses. I need an editor. I need a cameraman. No, the power's in your pocket.
So, speaking of rewriting, I mean, like, you guys did rewrite Jack, except like there was no actual writing, like, but you did several times.
Well, yeah, I mean, the revolutions of it, of switching to found footage for one thing. And here's something though, this is why we kind of made it without a script, and I feel like it's better for it. I feel like if we had locked into a normative script, which was initially going to be just very artistically shot and doing a lot of natural born killer shit on all these TV screens. His dad owned like a bunch of TV repair shit. So we'd see thoughts of his flickering on screens and all that kind of artistic shit. But if we had written that and it was concrete on paper, I don't know if we ever would have had the gumption to pivot away and just go found footage. Now, when you don't have a script, you're not locking yourself in.
The documentarian character
was introduced because of the found footage aspect. We're like, well, who's shooting this shit about him? And the documentarian character becomes this whole through line that really makes it a horror movie instead of just an art film.
But
talking
even
head
that changed down the line, right? Didn't you do a whole different version of it, and then you came back and you're like
documentarian, etc. Hey, since it is just one actor or two actors at a time, you can just call them back in for reshoots if you need to, and you can be a little more relaxed about, you know, whether you get it perfectly. And even that itself, like we were just talking about the sound quality, etc. That even if it does seem a little tinnier or something, it's like really the bottom line is how good is the story? Is it grabbing you? Is it pulling you in, etc.
Right.
Like, you know, don't get in the way of yourself by trying to be too perfectionist with it as well, and just like focus on where the goods are, you know,
especially when the technical perfection is so saturated and ubiquitous. Now everyone out there can shoot something that looks
not even that impressive.
It's not. I see so many shitty, boring short films that look amazing.
Right.
They look top notch, Roger Deakins looking shit.
And there's
the story's boring. I don't give a fuck. So yeah, we're challenging people out there. Go tell stories, make little dirty artistic films that are never going to get made inside the system. And honestly, I'm willing to bet that the whole Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will come into play, because I've seen, look at throughout the years, what's her name that fucking wrote Juno and shit.
Oh yeah, Diablo Cody, right?
Diablo Cody.
Yes.
Like these people, Hollywood loves to tap somebody.
Right.
They don't give a fuck about this World War Z horde of screenwriter zombies trying to climb the fucking walls to get into Hollywood. They're like fending off those zombies, and then they're like, oh, let me go pluck this playwright. Let me pluck this YouTuber. Let me pluck, you know, they want
someone who already has built an audience. And,
exactly. Interesting, proven commodities. But if you're just sending query letters and asking permission your whole career,
it's a lot harder that way.
It's like Shark Tank, you know, you have to it has to be tooled up to some degree, or at least be able to like demonstrate it. You know, you can't just come in with just an idea. You have to have something that attracts them to you. Otherwise, you're just part of this huge mass.
Back to the rewriting thing real quick. I know this is what you wanted to focus on.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're supposed to be talking about. Although this is a cool conversation too. It's gone in lots of interesting directions.
Yeah, it's kind of how we roll. But I remember, I've mentioned this in another podcast we did once, but that movie The Doors, Oliver Stone's The Doors, there's a scene where Jim Morrison, played by Val Kilmer, goes up to Ray Manzarek, played by Kyle MacLachlan, on the beach, and he says, "What's up, man?" They knew each other from film school at UCLA. He says, "You making movies in Hollywood yet?" And Ray Manzarek says, "I had a meeting with the president of MGM." "Yeah, how'd it go?" I told him this idea I had and everything, and he thought it was cool. And he said, "Do you have a script?" And I said, "Script? I don't need a script. Godard doesn't use a script. He just improvises with the camera." And the head of MGM said, "Who the fuck is Godard?" Right? That always resonated with me. I mean, 30 years later, I'm talking about it. And that's kind of what we did with Jack eventually. We didn't have a script per se. I would script his dialogue because there's no way I'm going to expect this actor to go on 8-minute long hate rants and shit just off the cuff. So I would,
impressive.
You know, script it and teleprompt most of it to him and shit. But structurally, it was just totally organic and totally character driven. Where do I think this character, what mood would he be in this day? How would that dictate what happens? You know what I mean? And you can, of course, write all that. But once you do, I'm telling you, once you prescribe something, it's hard to then get organic. It's kind of like fighters. I make a lot of fight analogies. You can go in with a game plan, but as soon as you get hit in the mouth, the game plan goes out the window. That's kind of what happened to us the first day with Jack. That $800 day where you get 5 minutes of footage, that was like a punch in the mouth, and our game plan went out the window. But that's because the game plan is just that. It's a game plan. It's not a prescriptive course of action you have. It's not a military operation plan that you have to follow through, you know?
So do you see this experience changing how you write going forward? Like the next script that you do you think it's going to be a lot different because you went through this process?
I do, in the sense that, first off, I don't know how much Hollywood bullshit we'll ever even deign to deal with again. So it'll change what we write in the sense that we won't even think about what the market wants or reps want or whatever. And we'll truly just write what the fuck we want, which means we probably won't have that big career in Hollywood writing just the shit we want.
But maybe you don't need it anymore if we
exactly
build enough of it. Like Jay talks a lot about the creative middle class. Like, do you have to blow up huge, or can you, if it sustains you, if it's enough to just keep you?
Can I make $60,000 a year making little
movies?
movies?
Like a regular job.
You don't need that many people watching your shit to make $60,000 a year.
Exactly.
Like if you've got 100,000 people watching what you're doing and you're putting out enough content, that's a living,
And why not do what you find most rewarding, if that's possible, versus something you don't find so rewarding, but maybe you rake in much more.
100,000 people paying $1. There is a livable salary,
right.
So.
Boom.
And we've also, I think it changed our writing in the sense that I don't think we're going to outline nearly as much going forward. And we've always kind of thought outlining was a necessary yet kind of superfluous part at the same time of the process, because so often we just find ourselves veering off. And I've seen interviews now. Quentin Tarantino says he'll outline like a first act. And that's all you really need. That is the movie. The first act is the movie, because once you set all the pieces in play, it can go any number of directions. Well, but the characters start to tell it,
You screw yourself in a way, because if, like you said, the characters tell it, that should be really what drives it forward, is that what decisions characters make. And if you already got this locked in ending, you're sometimes betraying what the character would really do, because as you're writing them, they actually take on more of a life, and they may just steer it in a whole different direction. That should be really what it is about, is like what people or characters do in certain situations and how that all.
That's what led to that 30-page cut in total rewrite of the ending of Mechanicsville, was reading it years later and saying, you know what, I don't buy that this is how it would end with these characters. I feel like we went for kind of the more uplifting, or the hero won and got away with it ending. And I was like, I don't think with the players we've put in play here, that's how it's going to end.
Mm-hmm.
And this bad guy is so nasty. This world is so mean that it's not going to end well.
Diabolical sort of drives and stuff. Yeah.
Doing these interviews, I'm surprised by how many really great writers don't outline. I thought screenwriting specifically,
you have to master it,
much
because
more
that's the fucking process when you get assignments and shit. When you pitch something, you have to do all this bullshit, because
commit to this outline that everyone signs off on.
Yeah, everyone signs off on it.
But sometimes we'd have like 7 or 8 people on one project that have to sign off on our latest outline or treatment.
Once you get into it and the characters start to tell you how shit should really be going, the outline goes out the window.
Right.
Yeah, you've got these 8 people who are like, what the fuck is this? We all agreed on this outline, and you turn in a draft and it's this. And you're like, yeah, but the characters, and you're like, but dude, I'm telling you, this is the fucking way to do it. And then you're sitting there fucking fighting this uphill battle to tell the right story when you've spent every waking day and night with it for months, and this is one of 10 spinning plates they barely give a fuck about. Yet they come in saying, no, it's got to be this way, because you're like, dude, I'm telling you, it's a house of cards. It's fucking, but you have to do that, and that's part of the process we reject.
So I wonder, like, there's obviously this major issue where writers get fired all the fucking time. There's very little respect for them, and in the vision that a writer brings to the table, right? And
especially,
features are what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I'm really curious if you took away that outline step, if that would solve a lot of that, right? Like if you sold a pitch or whatever, or you landed a job on a pitch, but then you just went away and you didn't come back to them until you had a good draft. I wonder, if you didn't have that outline in the middle, if it would be better.
I think some of the human nature side of this still, like, I think honestly, to be honest, it's a lot of ego and people wanting their contribution to it and everything. I feel like that's enough of a factor where they probably just would be very unlikely to allow it to play out that way. But B, that's the value they're getting out of it to a large degree, is that they got their, choice, like ideas and things in this way. There is that vestment, and if you did incorporate their ideas, it's like, it's better to get them up front than to deliver something that they had some completely different concept of. And at least it helps kind of guide it toward what they're expecting, like in terms of it being a deliverable, you know what I mean? Like what they're hoping to see out of it. At least you got some inkling, or guideline as to what they're expecting.
You're on the same page to a degree. Everyone feels good about it.
You didn't go completely in the weeds in their minds.
Too, I think there's Hollywood to me, like most of life, but Hollywood especially hinges on leverage. Everything's about leverage. That's what power is. That's what clout is. That's what getting your way is. And newbie writers working on some assignment have fucking zero leverage. You got none. So you're inclined to try and make all their notes work and shit. So I wonder now, that's part of why we made Jack. So we could be seen as visionaries who can pull some fucking, or weave gold from straw and shit, you know, like Rumpelstiltskin, which we resemble in more ways than one. But that if we, maybe Chris and I, if we did end up finding ourselves back in those meetings talking about OWAs again, we would just approach it as if we have leverage, where we would say, all right, guys, can we all just be fucking grown-ups? And right now, before we get started, agree that we're going to let the characters tell the story. And Chris and I are the fucking arbiters of these characters. We're the ones who are creating them, living with them, breathing with them. So you got to fucking trust us when we tell you, wait, we think the story took this turn. So we can outline major plot points and say we want it to end kind of like this and give some comps to other movies or whatever. But let's not get in the weeds with this prescriptive shit where we're all going to agree that it has to be this thing and then we're going to stick to it regardless if it's working or not, like some bad recipe. It's like, no, tweak the seasoning, take a left turn, pull an element, you know? Can we all agree to do that? They'll probably say, no, fuck you, in which case we'd say, all right, bye.
Exactly.
I feel like that's where we are at this point. If it's not going to be that way, I'm not fucking doing it. Fuck your money.
Dude, I mean, that's one thing that I've always loved about your approach to things, both of you, you know, and just, I mean, you really, at the end of the day, the art comes first for you. And I think that's just awesome.
Yeah, it is funny that when you do get hired for an assignment, that it's like you're being looked at. This is part of where my naivete in the beginning was rooted in, was that you're considered the expert in writing, right? You're being hired to write this. Otherwise they'd write it themselves, you know, if they know exactly how to do it. So you're supposedly the, you know what you're doing, etc. But it doesn't get handled that way. Usually it's weird. It's just weird.
You treat like a type of monkey a lot.
Right, exactly. I was going to say spec, but it's kind of it's assignment monkey or something, I guess. I don't know. But I don't know. It's just, that's not how we want to operate as storytellers. We always talk about, when you go back to a true just storytelling was just sitting around a campfire and just telling a good story, telling a good yarn, you know, and this stuff just sucks the soul out of it, man. It just, it's real hard to access that when you have all this noise and people second guessing. And I'm so much more enamored with the auteur who has a vision. I was going to say earlier too, with the script, like whenever you write, you're relying on the audience, the reader's imagination to bridge the gap between your vision, or at least not necessarily exactly your vision, but putting a vision in their head that really they spark to, you know, and they get turned on by. We've had people say that, like, man, my shoulders were hunched when I was reading this scene and shit, you know. That means you've done the job. But with screenplays, you rely on people doing that. Like, you have to make them want to be the director themselves when they read it and imagine it how it would look. But with screenwriting and prose, it's a whole different animal in that regard, that you rely on their imagination, and sometimes their imagination's lacking that breadth, or they're not.
How many people in the Hollywood creative process lack imagination?
Exactly. And again, though, it's not even just that, because I mean, I get that everyone has different subjective tastes and everything, right. But again, when it's an auteur who just puts their shit out there, I appreciate it just for that in and of itself, that this is their vision. It's not just this distilled thing that went through, like when we talk about with the, you know, Star Wars and stuff, the amount of credits at the end of the movie, it's just in the hundreds or even thousands. Whereas with this, it's just, like Jay said, warts and all, it's just more pure and more entertaining, interesting to me.
It's why I can enjoy a trauma film more than like Benjamin Button or some shit.
Right. You know? Great examples. Yeah. Oh, I had one more thing I wanted to say about your question about would it change how we write moving forward? like each project is going to demand what it demands. Like some are going to require that the dialogue all be, or it just be a completely an entire script from start to finish. Other things, like with Jack, it was more, mostly Jay would write out all the screeds and stuff. We'd brainstorm things and everything, but you'd write out, Jay would write out the whole, exactly what Jack would be saying, but we didn't have an actual script, a structural script. But that's the nature of that movie. Knock Knock, we shot without a script because we had the freedom of it just being me and Jay, and we were in this great house that was perfect for it, and we could just thrive in that environment. But another project we work on might just be more demanding. I mean, someday we dream to make Revolver. I don't know if you've heard of Revolver, but it's the story of the life of a gun, and it's 6 stories, one for each chamber of the gun in different decades.
That sounds familiar.
Covers 6 decades.
That to me is the dream, like
Epic,
Terrence
though.
Malick, just like, end goal. But we always still like, how can you do these things that are super ambitious, but with the smartest, and sometimes the obstruction of being forced to do it without a budget makes it that much more interesting. Like, in Revolver, we were going to start with the gun in World War II, and it would be, tanks and things at the beginning. And we just decided, well, actually, you can just boil it down to a guy's taking a shit in the woods, which was already in there. But in this scenario, it's even just darkness, and you hear the Nazis creeping by in the woods as he's taking a shit. And you hear Nazi voices, and they're about to ambush his troop, but he's in the darkness, and that's even scarier and cooler. And you don't need the fucking tanks and shit. You know what I mean?
Rad, man.
Like, yeah. So that's where we're at.
Yeah, you just see a few lights in the trees. That's it.
Yeah,
and some sound.
Each projects, like, how can you do it in a way that doesn't, like, what, just not masturbating basically with, a budget or resources or whatever. And it's just like, sometimes it's even better because it does require the viewer.
How can you make something feel huge?
Their imagination,
the smallest way possible. How can you make something feel massive? That's
sound itself is huge, like, for that. Yeah.
The challenge to me, like, and the thing that I fight with is, so I know that I want to get to this point, right, where I can create, and that's my full-time thing is creating and making things. And it's like, do you spend 3-4 years making one film, and then hope that somehow does enough where you can, make something off of it and make the next one, right? Mm-hmm. Or, do you write however many scripts or whatever you can write in that time and hope that, one of those hits? And it feels like the screenplays have a better shot at making some sort of income than a film that's going to take that long, but it's hard to say, and I don't know. But at the end of the day, you guys have now created something, that is your vision, and it exists. And
for better or worse, like you said.
For better or worse. But I mean, it's something that you're proud of. And I mean, I'm proud to have my name on it, and I hardly did anything.
Right.
So,
appreciate it, man. You were pretty fucking crucial to it, but
so
just the stage you came in and championing it.
It's awesome. So I mean, it's super exciting, and like, it does make me want to continue to find ways to produce things, and I don't know what that's going to look like, but I'm going to absolutely be looking for opportunities to do it.
Don't ask permission. Better to ask forgiveness than permission.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And when you're trying to break into Hollywood, it's just asking permission endlessly, And remember, like, Jerry Maguire, the mission statement? That's kind of the moment we had with this. Go small, go intimate, go,
Mm-hmm.
Well, to tell you the truth, like, I even kind of had a moment like that with this when I came onto it. I mean, it felt really risky. I've got a fairly stable life here, and it felt like a risk. But it just felt there was something like really punk rock about it. Like,
risk taking is fun, man. That's why people jump out of planes and shit.
Yeah, you know what? And like, I think it's going to be something that I'll always be glad I did. So I'm grateful to have had a part of it. So, well, anyway, so speaking of Cactus Jack, it's going to be out like 5 or 6 days after this drops. So anybody watching it needs to go see it. The link
CactusJackFilm.com
below.
Okay.
So yeah, CactusJackFilm.com, but I'll have a link there in the show notes below. Head on over there, watch the premiere, download it. There's going to be a Q&A with Jay and Chris and star R. Michael Gold afterward. And
Sydney
now
might be on that too, I think.
Oh, Sydney's going to be on there too? Awesome.
So that's our manager. If anyone has any questions for a manager in Hollywood, producer.
Yeah, but no queries. And, it's going to be absolutely awesome. And now we're going to go do a hard out episode. If anybody wants to see where that goes.
By the way, I was going to, I don't know if this shit's still going, but
yeah, it is.
I'll start the next one off. Go to the hard out episode if you want to hear my thought. I was just
go to the hard episode.
Right. He's going to cut that out probably.
Link below.
Dun, dun, dun. All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks a ton to Jay and Chris for that. That was super cool. They're always really interesting people to talk to. And there's actually a round 2 to that conversation, as you just saw on their channel, Hard Out. So definitely go check that out if you want to see what it's like to see me on the interviewee side of things. Hopefully that'll be interesting. But their channel is awesome. They do a lot of really, really cool and fascinating interviews on it. So I highly recommend that you take a look at it. You may have noticed the last couple weeks, I haven't actually been putting action steps up. And the reason for that is every part of the writing process is personal and individual and has to be approached as its own thing, right? But I feel like rewriting is even more that. Each rewrite is very much its own process, and you just kind of have to look at it like a puzzle and figure it out. And so I don't know that there really are action steps that you can apply to each rewrite that you do every single time. Certainly I hope you're continuing to read scripts, and I hope that you are working on your rewrite, and I hope that you're learning things from these conversations, and there will be more of them for sure. For my part, it's probably going to be a couple more weeks before I'm finished with this rewrite. Then I'll take a couple weeks off while I'm waiting for notes, and then I'll do the whole process over again, as many times as it takes to get this thing ready. Hopefully it won't be that many more, but you never know. I mean, the goal is to get it as strong as possible, and so that's what I'm going to do. Like every week, I'm giving away a copy of Mouse and Mistletoe, signed by myself and by Jack Purcell, who is a killer artist who has worked for DC and Marvel many times over. If you want a chance to win this week's copy, I am going to tweet out the trailer for Cactus Jack at about the same time that I tweet out this video. So if you retweet the trailer for Cactus Jack, I will pick one of you and send a copy of Mouse and Mistletoe your way. So that's all I've got for week 18. Thank you so much for checking this out. Go check out Hard Out. Go check out Cactus Jack. You've been warned. And smash cut to black.